by convention fed to millions. Blind belief in those who lead that own our system.
Hi, Jabari.
Hey,
How are you?
how's it going?
Good, good. Sorry if I'm a little bit late. It took me a while to get. I don't use Chrome, and I actually don't use Facebook on my computer at all. So I had to look up my password. And, yeah, figure it out. But here we are. Thank you for having me on.
That's absolutely fine. I wanted you to take your time to get on. I know everybody has issues with StreamYard. StreamYard is a very interesting program.
Yeah, I guess if people like it though.
Yeah.
I have a bunch of podcasts that I go on and they use StreamYard. And so I just have a Google. I use Safari on my Mac just because it's easiest and it seems to work best with what I do. I know a lot of people don't like it, but just keep Google Chrome as well. And when I need to, just pop it open. Yeah.
And your last name is pronounced Ho, right?
Yeah.
Okay, got you.
Yeah, thanks for asking.
I want to make sure I didn't want to master that. I want to thank you so much for coming on. And for everyone that is listening, thank you all so much for tuning in. This is the Green Party candidate for Senate in North Carolina, Matthew Ho. And one of the things about why I'm so excited that you're able to come onto the show is not only just your platform, but that you're running on, but also the revolutionary, the fight that you have done so much with just being an ex-Marine and exposing the truths that are going on overseas with our government, with our military. I've been watching you for a while now, ever since I saw you on RT. And I am so excited to have you here. And I have some great questions, and I'm not going to hold you for long because I know that you're a very, very busy man fighting a real fight. But thank you so much for coming on.
Well, again, thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. And thank you for those kind words.
Yes. And where are you held right now in North Carolina? Are you in your hometown or did you relocate?
Yeah, no, I'm originally from New Jersey, and then the Marine Corps brought me down here, and family live here, and so I've been coming down to North Carolina for more than 30 years now, and living down here for parts of it. And most of the last 10 years I've been here, and I live in Wake Forest, so right outside of Raleigh, not where Wake Forest University is, where that terrible. If people are following the news down here, I think it's national news. We have a terrible. Fire at an ammonium nitrate factory, which basically, you're talking about tons and tons of ammonium nitrate that possibly could detonate, which, as they are saying, would be the biggest bomb in the United States ever. Right.
Wow.
If people remember 2 years ago, the ammonium nitrate that was stored in Beirut that exploded and just devastated the entire port region, fortunately only killed a couple hundred people, I believe, in Beirut by the grace of God, right?
Wow.
This is orders of magnitude more than that. And there's a lot of really great, it's more than just the horror of it, the possibility of, oh my God, how many, they've evacuated, but you're talking at least 6,000 people would be made homeless by something like that, as well as the loss of life that could potentially occur because, they evacuated a mile radius, but that might not be enough. And you have first responders and firefighters, EMS, those folks who are in that vicinity. So, it is very dangerous, but there's deeper questions, that really, I think, get to the heart of what you and I want to talk about, Jabari, what you and I are working for, what we want to change, what we want to do, because, our system doesn't represent people. Why this ammonium nitrate factory, which again is basically a bomb. And that's not hyperbole. It basically is a bomb. When I was in the Marine Corps, I did a lot of demolitions and explosives, and we made explosives out of ammonium nitrate. The insurgents that fought us in Iraq and Afghanistan made IEDs, improvised explosive devices, roadside bombs out of ammonium nitrate. This is what you can use this for besides fertilizer, right? And so this is what Timothy McVeigh used to in his Oklahoma City bomb attack was fertilizer, basically. So the question, though, is why do you have this facility?
Exactly.
Right? I mean, yeah. I mean, you're right. I mean, it also do. I mean, I obviously we could talk too. I guess I know about how much our agricultural policies and our use of fertilizer and what it has done to our lands, what it has done to our soil, what it means for the future, because we have so overdeveloped our fields that they are not just producing less, but are in very real danger of basically running dry, to speak simplistically, right? But with this plant, the plant, if people can believe this, had no sprinkler systems and no fire alarms. Right. I mean, and it's because the plant was built before 1953, so it was grandfathered in. And why is that? Well, it's because this way the plant owners don't have to pay to have these sprinkler systems put in. Right. I mean, it is in the area of town it is in Winston-Salem. It is a black area of town. There is no way a plant like that would be in a white area of town.
Right.
Right.
I was going to ask that, like,
yeah,
what is the demographic there? For viewers that don't know, it's always when something is grandfathered in like that, it could be really dangerous. It could be in a demographic town that is poverty, and that's exactly what's happening right here.
Yeah. So the question, I think that and this is what I think you and I and others in our movement are trying to do, is like, look, government should be for the people.
Right.
And how can you say a government is for the people when it allows facilities like this to operate without modern safety features?
Right.
Simply because it would cost too much money for the plant owners. And the plant owners are the ones who, in reality, as we know how politics works, they're the ones who ultimately decide how much is too much, because we have a system, whether it's at the federal level or at the local level, as we're seeing in Winston-Salem, that is captured by money. Right. And, this is a big part of our movement, is to, get that money out of politics so that government can actually be part, government can actually be, part of the people, for the people, as opposed to for money.
Right. And this is a practice that you can see going on right now in Flint. Still to this day, in other towns like Flint, because Flint is not the only one. There's a town here in Connecticut that has going through the same issue. Small town, so it doesn't get that much coverage. But this is still just another example of just no one wanting to put money into what really needs to happen to upgrade, so we don't have to have these tragedies afoot. Which is very, very sad. And I really do agree with the taking money out of politics. Does that coincide with changing that system as well too? Like the corruption of like the Democratic Party and the Republican as well too. Let's be optimistic here, because we know it's a big fight. But let's be optimistic here. Like, what could be a beginning towards a better change for this government?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different ideas that are available that could be utilized to make our democracy more representative, more just, expand it, make it more inclusive. There are a lot of different things. And I mean, if people go to my website, which is MatthewHoferSenate.org, the top item on my issues list is about this, is political corruption and electoral reform. And we have to, it has to be, it can't just be ranked choice voting. It can't just be abolish electoral college. It can't just be overturn Citizens United. It has to be really comprehensive reform. And reform might be too soft of a term. I mean, we have to really restructure. We have to, first of all, we've got to take it back, our political system. I don't know if we ever had it. I mean, I think there's a lot of demographics in this country, a lot of communities in this country that never had it.
Right.
Okay. So, so even taking it back sounds good, but that's historically inaccurate to say that. But I think people get what I'm going towards. Right.
Right.
But, and then reimagine it and then restructure it. So the idea that it really is more of a, I think the goal, you have to have goals. And what's the goal? And I think the goal is direct democracy, right? Where people are directly involved in the decision makings of government. Now there's practicalities, there's, limitations with something like that. But we have to have a political system that includes people, and people can see that their input into the political system has value and has worth and has meaning. Year after year, I think 2020 stands out as a bit of an outlier. But in most elections, the biggest voting bloc in our elections are non-voters. It's not Democrats, Republicans, or independents. It's non-voters. And in the presidential elections, oftentimes it's 80 to as many as 100 million people don't vote. And there's a lot. Why would they? They got to take a day off from work. Right? A lot of our polling places are under resourced. So it's not only a day at work, it's a day on a cold November day, standing in line for 6, 7, 8 hours.
Insane.
Right. And what is the benefit? What is the value? What comes out of it? It increasingly you see communities that people in various communities that are just neglected. And that neglect is not oftentimes a benign neglect. It's a malign neglect, right? It's an intentional neglect for reasons, again, that gets back to what we're talking with the fertilizer plant. Ultimately, somebody's making money. Right. And so I think, we could be here. We could go through all the ideas I have for how we should change it. But generally, it has to be a complete reversal of the political system as we now know it. Yes. Right. In the sense that money is not the objective of politics. It's serving the needs of the people. And with providing the government with a mandate, with an ability to do exactly that. So when we talk about issues, say, such as, I just saw my congressman down here had a webinar on expanding broadband internet access, which in parts of North Carolina is a really big deal, particularly in our rural parts. And in the last 2 years have really shown how much broadband internet is a public utility. It's not a nice to have thing so that you can watch your TV shows on Netflix. Yes. This is a public utility. This is a necessity. And the reality of this package that Congressman Price was putting forth was that you get $30 off your internet service. First of all, that's $30. Hey, I'll take $30, but but you know what I mean, right? Everyone, I think everyone gets what I'm saying here. It's like $30 off. This is a public utility. Yeah. I can understand that like any utility, public can pay for it, but it probably should be that maybe you're paying at most $30, right? And not having $30 off of your $100 internet bill. That doesn't get to the point, though, that a lot of communities, again, particularly our rural communities, don't have access to broadband. I know people who are still using DSL. Wow. Right. Exactly.
That's a problem, North Carolina.
Huge problem.
Huge problem.
It gets into all kinds of issues of equity and equality. But generally, I think people can understand. Can you go through your day? Can you go through your week? I think maybe people have had this experience, Jabari, with I know I have, my phone breaks. And the first day it's great because I don't have my phone anymore. And I feel like this leash, this tether is now gone, right? And the first day is fantastic. I feel so liberated, right? And then the second day, you're like, oh, man, I really need to get this thing done. Or, oh, I got to order this. Or I have to sign up for this. Or, oh, I'm missing this for work or whatever. And because they really have become, via the internet, very sincere parts of our lives. There's some good consequences of that, and of course, there's some bad consequences of that. But the point is that if we had a government that represented the people, that people had direct input into, felt that they had a stake in, felt that they were in control of, things like public broadband would be something that all parts of North Carolina would be experiencing right now.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And that's a discussion that that needs to happen so much more. You know, I also talk about how social media needs to be a public utility.
Yeah.
Just the banning of other sites and stuff. And when it's a
Sure.
right winger, everyone celebrates. But while they're doing that to right wingers, they're also doing that to leftists that are actually giving out a really good dialogue. And so it's so important to talk about that as well too. So
yeah. I mean, a big discussion right now, of course, is Joe Rogan. You can't,
right.
you're right. You can't go anywhere without hearing that name. And I've not, Joe Rogan's interesting, I think, because a few years ago, and I think I wrote a Facebook post about this a few years ago, I said something about how what Joe Rogan is doing is great because he had just had on Bernie Sanders. He just had on Ed Snowden for like
Abby
4
Martin,
hours, right?
Ed Snowden for 4 hours. Yeah.
Yeah,
that was crazy.
So you think about that. My God, this Rogan just introduced Ed Snowden to 12 million people who probably didn't knew very little about Snowden. And so my thoughts were at that point several years ago, he's doing a great thing. And then since obviously I wasn't correct in that estimation, right? But I think the bigger point about censorship, you're exactly right. And this idea of social media, and this is the dangers though, right? This is the dangers of privatization. This is the dangers of financialization. When everything comes to eventually be about capital and about money, you then have very serious issues, very serious problems with establishing what is the public good. And I think that if you take this idea that censorship is almost inherently not particularly in the mid and long term, something that is in support of the public good. You lose track of that though, because you get into arguments now over whether or not musicians should be pulling their music from Spotify in order to cause Spotify to lose money, when the argument should be really about what's in the best interest of the public here, what's in the best interest of people. Yeah,
I talk about Spotify and all that all the time on this podcast. Even before this whole Joe Rogan situation, just how they treat artists and exploit their talent for pennies is just another whole different conversation that needs to be had.
Yeah, and I think that's a point about our campaign and our movement. And I'm sure you've had guests who've been much more articulate and knowledgeable about this. But I don't use Spotify, so I'm not familiar with it. But as I've learned, right, over these last weeks with this controversy and seeing people bring up the fact that Spotify really just takes from musicians and artists and doesn't give back, that it gets into this broader conversation about a living wage, right? About just wages, about fair, and again, now it gets to, I think the other part of direct democracy is democracy, to steal, Richard Wolff's phrase, democracy in the workplace. The one of the things I think that it really strikes me, and I'm assuming it strikes other people too, is that when Neil Young pulled his music from Spotify, people asked, well, is David Crosby going to do the same? And David Crosby doesn't have control of his music. And there's something that just is not right about that.
Right.
Right. There's just something that's not right about that. Now, I know David Crosby got a ton of money for it, but still, it's something not right about that. That, when you have that type of, and that's an extreme example, of course, we're talking about, say like Bruce Springsteen, who sells his music for $500 million. That, of course, is an extreme example.
But he gives his band members W-2s, but
right. Yeah, but that's an extreme example. But I think it underlies this idea of like, what is the value of work? Where is the justice in a person's labor? And how can that be found? And if you create something and you build something, you should maintain a share of that. And that goes from everyone from Bruce Springsteen down to the people doing the it's hard to talk about this stuff because the language of our society is also so demeaning and so restrictive, so when you say you want to make a comparison to Bruce Springsteen and someone who's doing more run of the mill type work, we tend to use demeaning terms. We tend to say menial, right?
Mm,
As if somebody who's washing dishes in a kitchen somehow doesn't deserve the same respect for their labor that Bruce
exactly.
Springsteen has. And so, I mean,
Exactly.
again, another larger issue here that I think is important for us in this movement to do is redefining the language, redefining our emotions about these topics, redefining how we view and
Mhm.
discuss these things. Because when we automatically say something like low skill or no skill, which is terrible
Right.
things to say, absolutely untrue, first
I
of all.
honestly, I
Yeah.
am just so shocked that they say that as
Oh, it's
if it's
awful.
like a professional term that they would use for a dialogue.
Yeah.
It's really
Oh,
astonishing to me.
yeah. If someone in the service industry is unskilled,
Right.
I wouldn't make a day working in a restaurant. I don't have those. I don't have those skills at all. I would be in tears probably 4 hours into my shift, right? Overwhelmed with everything that's going on and all the
It's a lot of work.
complexity of it. It's a ton of work. Yeah. I mean, but we call that unskilled,
Mhm.
which then, because of our language, because of how society uses language to inform decisions. Well, that means people who are unskilled don't deserve the same level of compensation, of value, of the valuation of their work, of appreciation, of respect, of certainly of justice or fairness
Right.
that someone who is skilled does. And I don't know if about folks who are listening, but I can tell you this. I mean, I've worked both sides, and I've seen what unskilled labor is, particularly like construction type of stuff. And that is anything but unskilled, but that's supposedly, anything that's blue collar is unskilled, so to
Right.
speak. And I've seen skilled with people sitting around an office where, you do about 2 hours of work a day. You sit around in meetings, you talk to your friends, I mean, like, so I've
Mhm.
seen both. And so this divide we have, it's completely artificial, but it's a
I
it's a
totally agree.
it's a construct that serves a purpose, and it gets back to what we were talking originally about the fertilizer factory.
Right.
Somebody is making money off of it.
Right. And we're told one thing I love about your campaign. I'm putting up certain points that I've noticed that I liked about your platform. I like the only thing about your platform, but we can't talk about all that stuff on your platform. So an economy for workers and the livable wage. And I love how you mentioned within your explaining of this talking point of how we basically move past $15 an hour,
Yeah,
$20 an hour. If you listen to economists today, they're saying it should be $33 an hour for minimum wage. What are the starting points for North Carolina, for instance? Because I know that North Carolina minimum wage is lower than as of Connecticut, and we're just actually getting towards 15, so it's not even any better.
yeah.
But what are the starting points? How can we actually like make that happen? Like
Yeah, North Carolina is at $7.25 for minimum wage.
Jesus.
Several years ago, when I was working at the YMCA, I made 10 cents more than that, so $7.35, and I'd work a 4-hour shift, and my take home would be $21, and
Wow.
that had a really big effect on me. In a sense that we had people there who needed the money, right? Who were and you think, my God, you work a full day, 8 hours, and you've made a little more than $40. How do you get by on this? Well, you get by on this because you go to another job right away. Because you are sharing expenses with family and friends. Because also you're skimping on things.
Yep.
You're not first and primary healthcare, right? I mean, so
Big deal.
it has and your point about what the minimum wage, I mean, minimum wage gets for most the first 30 years or so of minimum wage, it was coupled to productivity. So that as productivity went up, the minimum wage also went up. And around
Right.
1968, they decoupled it. And
Mm.
since then, you've seen this huge gap between, and actually for a while, people like, one of the things I think, Jabari, we can really do well in this movement is throw back in the face of the other movements what they espouse. So the whole Make America Great Again, besides the racist elements to it and everything else, there's this belief that the 50s and the 60s, America was this economic dynamo, and we need to
Right.
get back to it. And if you look at it, in the 50s, the minimum wage actually outpaced productivity every year.
That's post
Wages.
FDR.
Well, yeah, FDR starts in 38, and then, but under Eisenhower, so Republican, in the 50s, wages go up at a greater rate than productivity does every year. And in 68, that gets decoupled. And since then, we've seen this gap between productivity and wages that has really hurt working families.
Right.
I mean, it's something that, like, in the last 40 years, productivity has gone up 70% and wages have gone up 17%. And so what does that mean in the sense for North Carolinians? One, it just so we're clear about this. This didn't happen organically. This is not because of some free market magic or some nonsense like that. This is the result of government policies under every president since really Nixon, but especially under Reagan, under Clinton, right? Under Bush and Obama, certainly Trump and Biden. Biden's economic policies and financial policies are in line with all of them. And but what you have, though, what we're saying is that for more than 40 years, for 50 years, I was born in 73, my whole life, the government has had policies in place that have actively and directly benefited corporations, banks, and Wall Street, the wealthiest, et cetera, while directly undermining workers and their families. It's clear. These are the policies we have chosen as a government to put in place and to enact. And the results have been that workers can't pay for what they need because they are not receiving just and fair wages. They are not receiving the value of their labor. Very clear. I mean, this idea, I don't know why people struggle with this. If a business receives a truckload, say a restaurant receives a truckload of meat from Cisco or whoever, right? They don't get to undercut the cost. They don't get to say, if restaurants were to get together and say, we are going to undercut the cost of the materials we are receiving in an organized manner, the Justice Department would be on them, and the Commerce Department would be on them in a heartbeat, right? But where is the support for laborers, for workers who have had the same experience? Sorry about my dog. Who have had the same experience where there has been an organized effort by businesses to undercut the wages as well as government policy. So what that means then for, say, in North Carolina is that last year to be able to afford a 2-bedroom apartment in North Carolina, you needed to make about $18.50 an hour. Well, the average wage in North Carolina last year was $16.30 an hour. So people were already $2.20 behind, and that's across the whole state.
Right.
And what we've seen is that just report just came out yesterday. Rents have gone up in the last year 20% in North Carolina, and I can guarantee you, 20%. I can guarantee you that some parts of the state they went up a third, 33%. I can guarantee you, no one is seeing bumps to their pay 20%. 33%, whatever it is. I mean, so that's the reality is you have people who are, and so this idea that somehow $15 an hour is what is needed. Will it make a difference in people's lives? Absolutely. I mean, any amount of increase is going to make a difference when you are, living paycheck to paycheck like that. But, the reality is, as you said, Jabari, $15 an hour was a good idea 5-6 years ago, but again, and so my idea, what I believe, and I didn't make this up, I get this from other people. I mean, I wish I could claim I was just sitting there one day and it came to me. Was that is that what we need to have is we need to have a minimum wage that is annually adjusted for cost of living, specifically housing costs, in the zip code of employment. I mean, this way now you're localizing wages. You're making sure wages are in harmony with the local economy. You're accounting for regional differences. It may not be by zip code. It may be by city. It may be by county. Maybe by region. Maybe it's by state. I don't know. How best that would be implemented. I would think it would be by zip code. Certainly an easy enough thing to do. We have all the data points so that, if housing in your area goes up, you can afford that. Because all the other things about housing, about how we're going to, well, the county or the city is going to, they're going to purchase this land and then they're going to turn it over to developers. They've been saying that for 50, 60 years now, and I don't see it happen. We had here in Raleigh last year, a house that was supposed to be affordable housing was put on the market for $515,000. I mean, that's the reality of the affordable housing programs. I mean, like, they just don't, and you would like to think that until we get back to originally we were talking about direct democracy and people being in control of their government. Look, we had a city council member in Raleigh who took $250,000 from real estate developers up in New York. I mean, like, how the heck are people of this area going to be represented when you have that type of influence being bought by and it's not just outsiders, it's also people here. So yeah, there's a lot to this idea of what a living wage actually means and how we can go about accomplishing it.
Yeah, and there's so much need for unionizing as well in North Carolina. That can be such a big uplift as well too for helping workers, just unionizing. And I know North Carolina is a right to work state, a bona fide right to work state. I've noticed that you had that on your platform. Is there anybody else that agrees with you as well too for unifying and livable wages?
No. The presumptive nominee for the Democratic Party here, who the Democrats cleared out their primary in order to make sure a centrist that would be the person. Yeah, I mean, she is. Sherry Beasley is. She has on her platform that she's in favor of raising it to the $15 minimum wage. But as we discussed, $15 is just not enough. We know this. It's not enough. The data shows people can't live on it. Newspaper down here had a story about how hard it is to live on $15 an hour already. And one of the things that, like, they kind of didn't make a point of is that the person they are talking about who was making it on $15 an hour lived almost an hour away from where she worked because she couldn't afford to live where she worked. Right. Jesus. I mean, like, just right there, that's a lot of it. So, Sherry Beasley is in favor of the $15 minimum wage, but great. So I don't believe the Democrats would ever raise it. I mean, so, and show me why I should believe that. Right. But even if they did, then what? It's going to stay at $15 for the next 15 years again, right? I mean, like, so unless
15 is going to look like 7 now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like I said, it costs last year. Now it's 20% more. So if I could do the math in my head real quick, if it was $1,850. That means it's about now to rent a 2-bedroom apartment. It's probably about $22 an hour is what's needed throughout North Carolina based upon the 20% increase in rents. So, and workers are making $16.50 an hour. I mean, like, so how how is that going to work? How does that help? What type of change does that impact through policy that has a very real effect on, and I'm not talking about small amounts, elements of the population, certain communities. I'm talking about, 55% of Americans can't afford a $1,000 expense. Yeah. So if you are lucky enough to own your own home and you have something happen, which is any homeowner can tell you it will, a lot of people don't have the money to be able to shell out for that expense, whatever it may be. Your heating breaks in the middle of the winter, right. And then, as far as a renter, if you're a renter, you can't afford a $1,000 expense. How the heck are you ever going to be able to afford to purchase a home? Yeah. I mean, and there's all kinds of things we can do about that, but that's the reality for the majority of the people in this country. And that's one thing I will say about our platform. And again, people can go to, MatthewHoferSenate.org and look at it. Yep. I don't think there's anything on there, Jabari, that doesn't have majority public opinion support in the United States. And if it's not majority public opinion support, then it's plurality support. The stuff that you and I and others in our movement are advocating for is very popular, wildly popular
Right.
among
Right.
American people
Right.
because it's what they need, and
Right.
it can get, and it somehow, and I've had this already said to me by people from the Democratic Party, how my platform is radical and fringe. It's radical and fringe for people in Washington, D.C., whose donors are going to be upset by it. That's
Exactly.
it. That's
That's
it.
what they're saying. That's
Yeah.
exactly what they're saying. I'm looking like a madman because I'm always saying that whenever I do a reaction video, just something that's going on, like with the whole Ukraine situation.
Yeah.
It's literally like when Charlemagne the God asked a question to Kamala Harris, is Joe Manchin the president or is Biden the president? Well, the real question he should have asked, which was a great question because it kind of pissed her off and made her literally go on a rant for a few minutes on him, which I've never saw in my life. You literally made the vice president go out of character. So kudos to him for that. But what she should have asked was, how much is Manchin getting paid to oppose these progressive, not even just progressive,
Right.
like borderline ask? How much is Biden being paid to not even back and put fire under Joe Manchin for these borderline ask? Because that is the big deal. And you notice they have the same donors that the Republicans do. So it makes liberals look very hypocritical when they talk about that and not really get into the full basis of what's really going on.
Oh, absolutely. The overlap between the Democrat and the Republican in this race in North Carolina for the U.S. Senate is much greater than my overlap with any other candidate. In fact, I mean, possibly in terms of like life and death issues, yeah, of course, the Democrat and I overlap on abortion. Although I would never be a Democrat like Hillary Clinton, who would have a pro-life running mate, right? I would never ever support the Hyde Amendment.
Makes
right?
no sense.
Right, but the Democrats do. I mean, there's just no how. One of the things that is really important for me is philosophy. How do we arrive at these decisions about issues and policies and what programs we want to see? And you have to have a philosophy. You have to have a philosophy that is rooted out of study, of course, and good books you've read and what you've learned from other people, but more importantly, from your life experiences, right? From the experience. I mean, and that's so much of what this campaign is about. The healthcare aspect, that ending the war on drugs, those are life or death things. And I know people who are in life or death situations with them. I have people in my life who have to, I have healthcare workers as friends who, as healthcare workers, they cannot afford to purchase healthcare for themselves. They can only afford to purchase healthcare for the other people in their family, their children, in one friend's case, her mother as well, but themselves, they cannot afford healthcare for as healthcare workers, right? The craziness of that, the madness of it, and the how heinous that is. I mean, I have other friends who are people that have been business owners. These are not the people that the Republicans would lead you to believe. These are people that were business owners whose life was and then life happened and things are right. I mean, and they don't have health insurance. Right. And they have to make terrible decisions and they can't get the help they need. And they have to. Right. I mean, so this is in my life. I mean, this is I have my own experience with health issues as well. I was fortunate to be able to go to the Veterans Administration. So I know what it's like to be able to go and get help through a system that's designed first and foremost. I mean, the VA has its issues, but designed first and foremost to provide care, without other concerns, unlike the rest of our healthcare system, which is designed for profit. But I know what it's like to be able to call my doctor and not worry about a bill. Right. And I tell you what, because of the conditions I had coming home from war, the traumatic brain injury, the moral injury, the PTSD, if I did not have that available to me, I would have killed myself. Because if I am not, without having that access to healthcare, I wouldn't have made it. No way. And that's, I mean, so, you have that, the war on drugs, the criminalization of it, right? And people in my community where I live who, people I know who have been victimized by it, families destroyed because of our mass incarceration policies, right? Because, as well then too, the deaths. I mean, I know too many people who've been shattered by those deaths who have lost husbands, who've lost sons, who've lost friends, because as it comes to mind, it's just men I'm thinking of right now, but I also know women who've been brutally, been killed by it. And
Right.
it's because we have a policy in this country that treats substance abuse and addiction as a criminal matter rather than a public health matter.
Right.
So there's no overlap with me on these issues with the Democrat or the Republican. And these are life and death issues. And that's
Right.
enough. I mean, the people of North Carolina deserve to have those options on the ballot.
Right.
Every state, every community, the fact that we, in 2024, when there's a presidential race, will there be someone standing up there saying, this is what we're going to do to fix these problems that are killing Americans every day?
Right. Right. And 25% of the United States population is incarcerated. And majority of those incarcerations is over drugs.
Oh, the incarceration, yeah, right. I mean, we have a quarter of the world's we've got a quarter of the world's prison population, and less than 5% of the total population.
Yes.
I mean, it marries up, right? I mean, this is one of the things that we talk about a lot in the organization I belong to, Veterans for Peace, is that the wars overseas are mirrored with the wars here at home. So if you understand the United States to have more prisons and prisoners than anyone else in the world, you can certainly understand how the U.S. by far has more overseas military bases, right? If you understand how we have a system, right? We have these wars overseas that veterans, which have killed and made homeless tens of millions of people without any discussion at all in this country about reparations. But if you understand that, you can understand how many hundreds of thousands of veterans are dealing with the invisible wounds of war, how many are killing themselves because of it. Well, if you understand that, you can also kind of see the link with our policies. Why the United States has twice the amount of COVID deaths as any other, the peer nation, nation that has a similar level of GDP. Right. I mean, like you can see how these things match up. We've got more guns than people in this country, and we are the biggest exporter of weapons in the world. Right. So wars overseas mirrored with the wars here at home. I don't think anyone's big stretch for people to look at our war on drugs and then look at our wars overseas and say, yeah, there's a lot of similarities there. I mean, look what just happened in Minneapolis. A special.
What's happening in Minneapolis?
A young man was shot and killed while sleeping during a no-knock warrant, and he was not even the target of the police action. And so there is considerable attention to Minneapolis, and of course, a lot of people are out on the streets. And I'm very grateful for that. But a situation where, and the reason why we know that this happened is because the body camera footage showed it. This is what happened. If you didn't have that footage, the police would just lie about it like they did for decades or centuries even, right? So yeah, you have this where, when you have it, basically gets down to this idea that violence as a solution, particularly a state solution, is violence. This is the result. The what we see here, this carnage, is the result.
And that's why Chelsea Manning is ridiculed so much. That's why Julian Assange is ridiculed so much.
Yeah.
Because they've shown what happened overseas. They've shown that. And it shows a government that's not given democracy, but becoming the judge and executioner to black and brown countries that deserve their right to their own independence and economic growth. And that's just the way it's the way it is. And it's just so sad. And that's why we need voices like you, to especially veteran voices, especially veteran voices like you, that just keep on drilling this message of what needs to change. Because America loves their veterans. They love their veterans, but they don't realize how much the government does not treat their veterans right. And I wish we need more voices like you to just keep on pushing that notion of like what we're going through over there, what we're dealing with over there, you know?
Yeah, thank you for saying that. The wars have been so terribly destructive on so many levels, and for so many people. And particularly the countries that have been just absolutely destroyed by these wars, and the United States just picks up and leaves, and then is eager 5, 6 months after the last war ended. I wouldn't say it ended because the sanctions and the freezing of
Exactly.
Afghan money. It's just war by
Sanctions.
sanctions are just war by another right, another by another name. You're starving people. You're letting people freeze.
Exactly.
I mean, that's so but what we're ready to go to war now in Eastern Europe. And it's just and so much of this is so dirty. So much of this is so dirty. You look at the roots of this crisis in Ukraine, and it comes down to not just the typical suspects in the sense of the arms industry and the banks and that kind of
Right.
stuff, as well
Right.
as C. Wright Mills, who was a intellectual in the 50s who really took on the Cold War, as C. Wright Mills would call them, the crackpot realists who think that the United States has to own every piece of the ground militarily in the world, and that all
Exactly.
nations must be under our flag.
Jesus.
Besides, I mean, those people are very real and they're very dangerous. They exist all through Washington, D.C. Some wear uniforms, most do not. Besides the usual suspects, you have this whole issue. If you look at the roots of the Ukrainian crisis, you really see the role of the energy companies, the liquid national gas, in particular, this idea that Russia is a competitor to U.S. gas exports.
Exactly.
And Europe is a huge consumer of gas, a huge marketplace. And yeah, I mean, this is not conspiracy stuff. This is, you look at the Cove Point liquid natural gas facility that Dominion Energy was built in Virginia, and that purpose, $3-4 billion expansion of their plant in 2013 was meant to export to Europe. That's the same time that people remember, because in the 2012 presidential debates, President Obama mocked Mitt Romney for saying that Russia was an enemy or an adversary. Well, how come in 6 months to a year, U.S. policy on Russia completely flipped, right? It's got a lot, not saying it's the only reason, but a lot's got to do with American gas exports to Europe and the fact that Russia is the main competitor. So this is all so dirty. There's no, like most wars, don't want to say every war, because there are oftentimes wars against occupation that are quite justified. But in most wars, there are no good sides. And Ukraine is a terrific example. The only good side are the common people of Ukraine, whether they speak Ukrainian or Russian, who are already 15,000 of them been killed, but who are been trod underfoot by this. That's the only good side, and that's the only side I support in this.
Exactly. The working class people of Ukraine. Exactly.
Exactly.
They never mention about how the Obama administration literally went as far as to support it in Israel as well too in 2014 to support a neo-fascist coup that now has in control of Ukraine. That they literally oust a democratically elected Ukrainian leader and placed in a neo-fascist coup. And so it just became so much more dirtier. You don't hear that. You don't hear that at all in Western media at all.
Let alone the and it's a big part of our campaign, Jabari, is accountability. Who is held accountable for that decision? Who was held accountable for this decision to conduct a coup in Ukraine, of which there's no doubt? I mean, there is audio recording of the U.S.'s top diplomat for Europe and the American ambassador in Ukraine discussing the coup explicitly. I mean, there is no doubt about this, right? Let alone the vast and long history of American coups overseas. I mean, dozens and dozens and dozens of them, right? So there's no doubt about that. who, obviously a complete disaster, because that prompts Vladimir Putin to seize Crimea, right? That prompts a Russian, Russian separatist movement in eastern Ukraine to split off. That prompts this civil war. That prompts all kinds of atrocities, causes the region to be unstable, puts us on this course because of that coup. Who has ever? That's one of the things about the campaign, is this desire to hold accountable people for these decisions that have ruined so many lives. And not just talking about the coup in Ukraine, but also too, there's never any accountability for the wars in Iraq or Afghanistan or Syria or Libya or Yemen or any of the other one. I mean, there's no accountability for look, we had 100,000 opioid overdose deaths in the 12 months period last year. Where's the accountability for that? I mean,
doesn't it become like a common thing for people my age now to die from fentanyl in this country?
Yeah, your age group, what they call the deaths of despair.
Yeah.
Right. Which is overdose, which is suicides. I think you can tie. I really do think that we have such a crisis of despair and distress in this country, that this country does not deserve, that people should not be experiencing, but because of the policies we have chosen in this country to pursue for all my life. Again, I was born in 1973, to maximize profits, to make sure the banks get bigger, the corporations bigger, the wealthier get bigger or stronger or richer, or however you want to describe it. Where we have a country where when the Omicron variant of the virus is announced, after how many hundreds of thousands of deaths, and now there's another variant, the stock market goes up.
Yep.
That's the country we live in. Right. And so when we look at these issues, these deaths of despair, you're telling me there's not a connection. It may not be a line, but come on, there's a connection here. We've got a country that the financial markets cheer and go nuts as because more people are going to die. So yeah, we do. We have these issues, and who's accountable for that? But it is a uphill battle. Of course, it's swimming uphill, as a friend of mine likes to say. But the alternative is to allow it and accept it, and that's something I don't think any of us are capable of doing.
Right. And it's just so important to keep reminding people that what goes on overseas affects us here.
Yeah.
So we have to pay attention. We have to. Everybody, I want to thank you so much, Matthew Ho, for this conversation. We're getting down to our hour mark, and I wanted to make sure that it's a perfect enough time for people to grasp this. And I'd love to have you back on in another season. This is such a great dialogue that we're having. And for everyone in North Carolina that is in your district, it goes by district, right? Or are you going for federal?
Federal U.S. Senate. So it's all
of North Carolina.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So definitely MatthewHo4Senate.org. Get on that website, learn about his platform, vote for him, vote green. Here in Connecticut, I'm a Party for Socialism member, and we have a strong relationship with the Green Party. Peter Gosselin, when he was running for district attorney, I was one of the volunteers on his campaign. I really do love the relationships I have built with Green Party members here in Connecticut, and I'm so excited. I'm still so excited that I'm able to talk to you, someone who I've been listening to for years, and use as talking points. I directed people towards you. I'm so glad that you're running, and I hope that you give these Democrats hell.
Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me on here. One thing I'll say finally is that we're not on the ballot yet. We need 15,000 signatures by mid-May to get on the ballot. Mm-hmm. So if you think, like I think, that people in North Carolina should have deserve the opportunity to vote for someone who is, in favor of universal health care, a full comprehensive Medicare for all, in favor of universal higher education, student medical debt cancellation, real action on climate change, ending the war on drugs, getting money out of politics, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, please support me and go to my website and donate, sign up to volunteer, tell your friends and family about it. I mean, that is, if you can do one thing, it's to let people know about this campaign, because we are up against so much money and we are up against such a blackout by the traditional media that we need, the campaign needs everyone's help, and would love to have people involved.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to share this to my family out there in North Carolina. That's my second home, Pine Top and Rocky Mount. That beautiful area. That's where I was partly raised from as well too.
Okay.
So I'm definitely going to let them know about you and tell them straight up, because me and my mom talk about politics all the time. And my sister is moving back down there actually next week. I think she's actually moving to Raleigh. Actually, she's getting a home in Raleigh. So I'm definitely gonna let them know. I'm going to do my best and tell them to spread the word.
Please do. And your family wants to join our team, we can use a team leader out in Rocky Mount. I know that. So happy to have as many people be a part of this campaign. I try and make a real effort to say, rather than say I, to say we, because that's how I really do feel about this. And we don't have a campaign team. We have a campaign collective, so we're really trying to be the ideology and philosophy and ideas that we espouse. We're really trying to do that here with this campaign.
Thank you so much, Matthew Hill. And enjoy the rest of your day. Keep on fighting. And I want to thank everybody that has listened to this, and the people in the future that are going to listen to this as well too. Thank you so much, and keep on fighting. One love. Have a good day, Matthew.
Hey, thank you so much.
Blank period, yeah. On my black, brown, and indigenous. Gotta holler if you really feeling this. Gotta holler if you really real enough. Other rappers is delirious. Yeah, it's really that serious. Better holler if you really feeling me. I gotta keep it 100, ayy. If you don't like it, then fuck it, ayy. We gonna win in the end, yeah, we gonna live in abundance. I gotta keep it 100, ayy. If you don't like it, then fuck it, ayy. We gonna win in the end, yeah, we gonna. I gotta keep it 100. We gotta stop all the stunting. You know we coming from nothing. Yo, you talking about money, you bluffing. We gotta do something different. We gotta change how we live in. We gotta do better for women. We gotta do better for children. We gotta listen to victims, whether Jewish or Muslim or Christian. It doesn't matter your religion. You gotta stand against the system, or else you just another villain. How you just sitting there chilling?